And welcome back. As the conversation is so engaging with KR Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro and Nyando Member of Parliament Gerald Okello, first timers on the bench. You guys, we have such a different opinion of you legislators, I'm sorry to say. For the most part, maybe we just focus on the loud ones or the boisterous ones or the, the noisemakers. But you guys are spewing some intelligence here. I'm actually quite impressed, both of you. Honestly, why don't you translate this out there? Because a lot of us have lost faith in our Waheshimigas.
Right.
We have.
Right. Well, Jeff, before I became Member of Parliament, I scanned my environment and realized that Nyando really needed very serious interventions, not just on the flooding front, but just generally. Schools in dilapidated state, our roads really wanting, our agricultural well-being dwindling, and this is a rice-growing area, and just coordinating with people on a day-to-day basis and understanding their plight. So I took quite a while to, get to know in depth these fundamental issues. And then the next question is, how best do you address them amidst the scarcity of resources in collaboration with both the national government and the county government? So this really mattered so much to me. And I said, once I get there, of course, the first port of call is the national government CDF funds.
Of which you get 100 million?
100 million, and very limited on what it does. It can only do schools and issues to do with security, build a chief's office or collaborate with the national government to do something for a police station. So amidst these scarce resources, I really figured out what we needed to do. Fine, making noise is good for the optics, okay? And there are many members of parliament who are more popular out there than they would be in the House. In the House, there's legislation, so you really have to have your points to put across on any bill or motion that comes across for debate. And many a times, apart from one of the TV stations that shows parliamentary proceedings, no one else pays any much attention to what goes on in there. Yet, that is the gist of legislation. And then there is the second limb of committees. And committees would be the second port of call, where lots and lots of oversight roles are carried out. And apart from very flimsy issues around maybe KEMSA or these headline-catching matters, no one pays attention to what happens in those committees.
So we don't care to, we don't bother.
They don't bother. And yet, there are people who are up to task and understand these matters, and they play a very pivotal role on these committees. But the media has its own interest. There are people they would want to show on a daily basis abusing somebody in a public rally, and the electorate would demand that even before who and who speaks, let us hear from so-and-so. Just because when he comes out, he will be spewing hatred and vitriol. That is very attractive to the electorate. But on the flip side, you ask yourself, how is this helping the same electorate to change his living standards?
Jeff, thank you very much for even the compliment. We rarely get people like you to pass a kind word on us. First of all, being a politician in Kenya is not straitjacket because you are judged on very many facets. Yeah. Number one, the MP of the book, in terms of the roles of the MP, as far as the Constitution is concerned, if you stick with that, Jeff, you'd be seeing Parliament on Viusasa. Because the work that you do in terms of the MP of the book, registrating, first of all, it is tedious. It takes a long process. I've had like 3 bills in Parliament. None of them has passed. I had a bill on anti-corruption, you remember? Of course, it failed in the second reading. I had another bill on consolidating our state-owned enterprises. It has never been debated to date. I'm just trying to say that the expectations in terms of an MP of the book, if you stick by it, you may not have a very high chance of re-electability. The current MP of Kenya is not the MP of Parliament, unfortunately. It is the MP of the constituency. And I'm sure many MPs would side with me that CDF comes in very handy. Because the kind of economic level of our country, if you go to convince people how hard you are working by telling them how many bills you are passing, wengine watakuuliza kama watakula hiyo bill. Or you'll lay the bill ikuwe barabara huko nyumbani. The MP of the constituency is the most consequential MP in the Kenyan setting. And I can tell you, and I'm not trying to chest them, I would wish one day that even beyond covering BBI and beyond covering what we do in Parliament, you come to our constituencies. Jeff, in Kiharu, we have around 112 primary schools. I can tell you without blinking of an eye, out of the 112 primary schools, we came up with a rejuvenation program of our institutions. Currently, public primary schools in Kiharu, all the 112, 97% of their classrooms, they look like academies in quotes. They look like the school you went. Not like the pouring center that we went. And all of them, Jeff, 97%, they have tiles.
Oh, can I ask you something real quick? As you're
have
saying
you heard that?
They have tiles.
Tiles.
Not mud floors.
Not mud floors.
Tiles. And the creation of 70 new constituencies. Bear with me here, right? Which, by the way, central Kenya will be the biggest beneficiary. Doesn't that mean more constituency development fund, more CDF for those constituencies? Because you're praising CDF right now, aren't you?
I am praising CDF, and I am very happy that you called us to this show, because we have a chance to demystify some of the issues that are being peddled out there by the promoters of BBI and their friends and surrogates. And I say so because this issue of 70 constituencies is being daggled on members of parliament and on Kenyan communities, but it is far-fetched. I want to be very methodical, and I wish we had a calculator, but I'm sure the viewers who are watching, they can calculate with me. First of all,
I can calculate with you.
Through this BBI, Jeff, listen.
Go on.
CDF Act of 2016, Part 2, Section 4, says that CDF is at least 2.5% of the revenues that we collect as a country, minus the monies that we remit to our counties. The current CDF has been based on 85% of the revenues, because the money that we take to counties is at least 15%.
Okay.
The BBI one is based on 65%, because 35% will go to counties.
Right.
That is one fact.
Okay.
The second fact is this issue that the people of Mount Kenya region are being taken for a ride, that we are the biggest beneficiaries of the 70 constituencies. It is not a half-truth. It is actually a lie. Out of the 70 constituencies, Mount Kenya region has got 11 counties, including Nakuru, by the way. 11 counties. Out of those 9 counties, they become 11 when we include Nairobi and Lamu, because they are Mount Kenya predominant people in Lamu also. Out of the 9 Mount Kenya counties, we are only getting 17. That is 24% of all the new constituencies. Mount Kenya population is slightly above that 24%. How is Mount Kenya being favored? Let me give you a clearer example. Let's use, for example, a county like Murang'a, where I come from. We can use even Nyeri. Forget even the issue of basing on 85 and 65. Let us deal with CDF as it is now. We are 290 constituencies. We are given 137 million. But for the simplicity of our calculations now, Jeff, take your calculator.
Okay.
For the simplicity of our calculation, we remit 29 billion shillings to our counties, so that every MP lining to take the CDF cash, literally, takes 100 million.
Correct.
Murang'a, I'm using Murang'a as a prototype. Murang'a has 7 constituencies.
Okay.
Times 100 million. How much is that?
700 million.
700 million, correct. Now, we are adding constituencies. That document is silent about baking the CDF. It is about distributing CDF. And therefore, out of the 290 billion, Jeff, divide 290 billion, not by 290 now, but by 360.
I thought you said 29 billion at first.
29 billion.
Yes.
That is not changing, according to BBI. Money is, the percentage is not changing. So it's 29 billion.
Jeff, my brother is
let me finish,
here.
please, let me finish.
I'm confused.
Jeff, this is very simple.
Confusing himself.
29 billion shillings
yes,
is the money we give to our constituencies now. Ceteris paribus.
Correct.
Holding all other factors constant.
Yes, 290 times 100.
290 times 100.
Yes.
BBI is suggesting that we add 70 more constituencies.
Correct.
It is silent on adding the money. Are we together
What
up
do you
there?
mean? The
No, let me finish.
constituencies
It's a
will get
very profound, this is a very important point.
Yeah.
So 290, you have added the eaters in quotes. You have added constituencies. If you divide 290 billion,
Yes.
now not by 290, but by 360. Are we together there?
Constituencies, yes.
Each will be getting 80 million. Again holding all other factors constant. So Murang'a will now have 8 constituencies after the additional one.
Jeff,
let me finish. So
circles.
it is 80 divided by 8. That is 640 million. Murang'a will be losing 60 million. On top of that, you add burden on Wajiko by adding another MP whose cost, using the last year's budget, if you divide the budget of parliament by members of parliament, a member of parliament, on average, costs Wajiko or Kenyans 50 million. Go to a county like Nyeri. Nyeri is getting none. You know what they are saying? Issue of quotas of constituencies. Now, instead of Nyeri getting, I'm trying to demystify Mount Kenya. I am sorry for the viewers who don't come from Mount Kenya. Constituencies remain 6. Currently, they are getting 600 million. But the money will reduce because of the many constituencies. So each will be getting 80. 80 by 6, that is 480. Nyeri is losing 120 million. If we had time, I would have given you tabulation for all Mount Kenya counties. Pale chini, down there, when you put the totals, Mount Kenya is actually losing. Through the BBI, it's not gaining. Okay. In terms of aggregate constituencies,
Jeff,
and in terms of the amount that is will be going to those constituencies.
All right.
Jeff,
your turn.
You know, he has taken you around in circles and even confused you and confused our viewers who are still glued on TV watching this show. But let me pick from the legislative part. He has said he has some of the legislative proposals in the pipeline. When I came into Parliament, and lawmaking process takes too long, especially when they're money bills. That means they have a budgetary connotation. So I came up with a bill also that was targeting indigents, that you go to a health facility and you get your treatment. And because, you know, diseases would never tell you when they come, many a times they find you without money. So the health facility would lock you in until such a time that somebody from the blues will come to bail you out. Or dead bodies. And you ask yourself, of what value is a dead body lying in a morgue? So I came up with a proposal to have hospitals release bodies and release indigents to go home and come up with an agreement on how to settle that money. Because again, if you have held me in a health institution, I should be out there making money to come and pay you, but you are holding me. Firstly, you are converting this health institution into a cell or a jail of sorts. It's not a detention camp. So that in itself is tinkering with our laws on freedom of movement.
Did that bill pass? Was it
well, it is still being cascaded along that long chain. But at least I have appeared before the budget committee and they've given it a nod. But I'm just wondering, why would you hold somebody just because he's not able to pay? Yet, you can still go to court and file a civil case over this person who has refused to pay your debt.
Okay, let's get to the part about constituencies.
Now, on the matter of constituencies, firstly, he's getting everything wrong. When the CDF was firstly enacted, I think the year 2003, it started by 6 million per constituency because that is what the economics then favored. So 2.5% then came to 6 million. It has been moving progressively. Today it is not 100 million. He doesn't even know. It is 137 million, Jeff.
He mentioned that.
Because that is what our budgetary line supports, okay? And unknown to him, even what goes into counties in the name of 30% or 35% as is proposed in BBI, this money is not going in heaven. Counties are composed of constituencies, so that money is still going to the very clients that we all serve. So what is the problem if one channel of that money is increased and it is awaiting the very people to make good use of it? So today we are getting 137 because that is what our economics support today. Next year, and I'm cocksure this is going to happen, barring any other difficulties expressed by coronavirus, this is going to be like 150 million. And Jeff, if you allow me, I was just Googling a few things to discard and discount what my brother here was talking about. And just give me a second, because this is very critical to me. Now, I was looking at how our economics have played out since the year 2012. And these are figures that everybody can have access to. The Kenyan GDP has more than doubled between 2012 and 2020, from 48 billion to 108 billion. 2012 to 2020, our GDP has increased. Income per capita has again more than doubled from $65,000 to $140,000 per capita income within that same period of time. Manufacturing index had tripled in that period between 2012 and now. Tripled. Well, he was talking about, the big business moguls that are non-existent in the current dispensation. They're there. But do you expect them to come here on a daily basis to showcase their wealth? They will never do that. Then, commercial interest rates have gone down from an average of 19% to 11%. And these are facts that can be, verified. And banks and other lenders' loan books have increased fourfold by 400% in the same period.
And you're the economist, huh?
Yeah,
Jeff,
well, he doesn't understand the economy.
I want to
well.
advise my brother that even when you are googling, you can Google and still not engage your I don't want to say common sense.
At least
because I don't want to sound
anything
disrespectful. But I want to tell my brother Jared, even the richest country on earth in terms of GDP per capita, which is Qatar, has not reached the figures that you've just mentioned. The Kenyan GDP per capita currently is around $1,800. That is what is called nominal GDP per capita. If you configure the same in terms of something we call PPP, purchasing power parity, that goes to around $3,000. So it's far from the hundreds of thousands that you are mentioning. But I also want to say that the Kenyan GDP, it is true, it is around $100 billion. That is around 10 trillion Kenya shillings. But there are so many parameters that my brother is getting wrong. And I think our policymakers, Jeff, and I say this when my heart bleeds, by the way, when I'm saying these kind of things. Because I know this is the heart of our country. All the things we are trying to sort around the BBI, all the issues around productivity, just needs deliberate economic policies. Number one, he has talked about the issue of interest rates. Interest rates have many things to consider. But the most important thing is access. I agree the loan books of our banks have grown. But they have grown actually leapfrogging the domestic borrowing by our government. The government of Kenya borrowing in terms of our domestic market has crowded out every business person and enterprise. so that you get a bank. Currently, you can open a bank, Jeff. Call it Jeff and Nyoro Banking Corporation. We go to CBK. We are given money using the current CBR. Then we let parastatos and other government agencies at a markup. So you get money free, then you let the same government the same money, of course, by getting a free margin. And therefore, I want to discount the whole issue of bank. The issue of capital, again, has two areas or two sides. That is why it is argued over time, even if you keep pumping capital in countries like ours, that is Kenya, and many developing countries, that is not necessarily what is needed. Something more is needed. Because when capital is given, you need to assimilate this capital. You need to absorb this capital. Capital is absorbed by the progress in production technology. When you have technology changing in terms of production, let me give you a simple example. Supposing you are producing yogurt in where I come from, let's say Gaturi Ward or Wangu Ward in Kiaru, using the cottage industry. So you can produce 20 liters per day using the normal cottage manner. So for you to need more money from the bank, you need to upscale that your technology, so that you need a machinery, you need a boiler, you need a cooler, etc., etc., so that then you can absorb this capital. I believe there are countries that we can borrow from. I just gave an example, and I want to give you a few examples of how we can change the whole thing and the figures he's talking about and totally transform Kenya in less than 10 years. And I want to start here home. He's talked about this regime from 2012. I want to tell you, my brother, the GDP that has grown twofold. During Kibaki's time, I have just mentioned something called income, revenues. They grew fivefold. I can also mention the country that I referred before, just to show you how just policies, not even minerals, can change the destinies of nations. South Korea, I told you about General Park. When you get selfless leaders who have got foresight and their countries at heart, you can give your country wings. South Korea was at the level of Kenya in 1960.
66.
Even in 1960, it was at the level of Kenya. By 1963, when General Park became a bona fide president, we were more or less the same level. He came up with a deliberate policy. The economy grew, the exports grew 363 times in 19 years. You can't compare that with twofold. Let me give you another example.
How long was General Park in power?
Only 19 years. Let me give you...
Only 19.
Only 19 years. If you want me to cut the same to 10 and give you the figures, I'll do that. Let me give you another country that we'll have to hit. That is China. China, there is a leader, a global icon called Mao Zedong. Politically, I love him. He's a good guy because he mobilized the Chinese people, brought them together, and built a nation. But his economic policies, and especially the Cultural Revolution, was very detrimental to the Chinese economy. And by the way, when he was the leader of China, Deng Xiaoping, who I'm just about to refer to, was the Secretary General of the Communist Party of China. When he died in 1978, this Mao Zedong, there were 2 years that were lost through the Gang of Four, including his wife. They were trying to sideline Mao Zedong from inheriting power. Fortunately, Mao Zedong took the reins of power in 1978. From 1978, just through policies, opening up economy, giving money to enterprise, giving the right policies, the economy of China, the wealth of China got its roots from there. Currently, the GDP per capita of China is sixfold that of Kenya. South Korea, which we are at the same level, their GDP per capita, which my brother is quoting, is 30 times that of Kenya. We can go to Singapore. When Lee Kuan Yew took over Singapore, we were basically actually doing better than Singapore. Through concise policies, there was no minerals. Hakuna mafuta ilipatikana Singapore, nothing additional other than the brain of the leader. And the port. Currently, it is among the highest countries in terms of GDP per capita.
And Lee Kuan Yew was in office how many years? 40 what?
Up to 1990, but correct. We can cut the same to 10 years. We can give many countries, Jeff, to show that all the data that we are giving can actually reflect in the pockets of Kenyans if we just get the right policies.
And why haven't we done that? Let me ask you. I'm going to go magic. Well, why haven't we done that? You keep talking in lofty tones, by the way. Why haven't we done that? What's been the problem?
Can I give you my real answer?
Yes, short.
You know, politicians can get real answers and the good answers.
Give me the real answer.
I'll give you the real answer. Number one problem of Kenya, from where I sit, and I'm not trying to import or impute improper motives on anyone. Number one is something called state capture. The factors of production, the people who have always held the factors of production, both the traditional and the current modern ones, are the same. Jeff, when you have democracy, even when you talk about factors of production, the money trickles down to many more people. And therefore, their ingenuity, their imagination, their input in terms of technology counts for something in terms of the economy. Lastly, you know, people keep asking, this issue of hustlers, you people are trying to divide Kenya, because I've heard that many times. Let me give you a brief statistic from the government of Kenya, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. In Kenya, we have around 18.5 to 19 million hustlers, by the definition that you know, people who are in the informal sector. The people who are licensed within that informal sector, a person with a kabaza in town, a castol somewhere in Thika, those who are licensed are just about 8.9 million. Jeff, do you know the surplus per worker for those licensed enterprises is around 50,000 per month? The other 10 that are unlicensed hustlers, the hawkers, etc., they form the bulk. These are around 10 million Kenyans, unlicensed hustlers. Do you know what their surplus is per month? It is just apparently 3,000 shillings. If we just get the mechanism of shifting this base of people who are generally dependents and make them real agents of the economy, our country would grow by 40% without doing anything more.
Wow. Okay.
Well, Jeff, if you allow me, before
I go to the tweets?
Before you go to the tweets. You know, you were driving a point to my brother Ndindi that he failed to grasp. He has eluded many countries that have been very successful, and probably we started on the same pedestal with them then. You alluding to the fact that certainty in terms of leadership is key in all these things. I mean, 19 years, 41 years, 43 years in power under the same person who had the vision of his country. And that is what BBI is trying to address here, that even though our constitution talks about an electoral cycle of every 5 years, there should be certainty in everything that we do. There will be no violence, just like the United States of America. They have elections in 4 years, but even when they change power, apart from what we just saw the other
January
time,
6th, yes.
which was quite unprecedented.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and regretful. You know, that certainty is very important for our country to move forward. And just as I said, no one will come here to put his monies in our economy with the knowledge that in a few years people will be running helter-skelter around town, destroying the same investments that they put a lot of money in. So if BBI is the panacea towards all these shenanigans that we experience after every electoral cycle, then so be it. Let us embrace it, so that even if I lose the election, I lose it fairly. And we can shake hands and say, congratulations, let us move forward. That is what BBI is all about. It's not about creation of these jobs, creation of, well, he talked about some 5 gentlemen who are going to occupy the echelons of offices. No, it's about how do we create certainty that I lose, when I lose fairly. Okay. When you win, Jeff, you win fairly. You know, and there will be no contestation.
All the examples that I gave, transition to democracies. China, you may not call it a democracy in the Western point of view.
Right.
But it remains that it's a democracy. We have change of guard. South Korea is a straitjacket democracy, an adulterated democracy, meaning we have leaders who come and go. Currently, Singapore, I'm just repeating the examples that I gave. After 1990, by the way, not after 1990, from 1960. Jeff, let me finish. Lee Kuan Yew was being elected democratically through his party PAP.
That's what they say.
And therefore, they are democracies. The issue of transitioning and stability cannot be sorted by cherry picking the way my brother is trying to do and trying to kupakarangi, superficial solutions.
All right, can I read some tweets? Or
yes, please, go ahead.
I'm getting tired of standing here. Okay. Okello Mwalimu said, ask the two youthful MPs, how many and which legislative pieces have they sponsored? Oh, we talked about that in the National Assembly, that benefit the youth, who are persistently grappling with unemployment, high cost of living, drug addiction, among other challenges.
Actually, at the moment, we are talking about the anti-narcotics bill in Parliament, which is now under the second reading. It will be addressing these issues of drug abuse that has really dipped our young people.
It's affected a lot of youth, yes.
Right.
Jeff, if I can answer that.
Yes.
On my behalf, the bills I'm trying to sponsor. I tried to sponsor a bill on strengthening the fight against corruption. I was actually introducing life sentence to a certain threshold of corruption amounts.
And what happened to that?
It never went through. I also came up with a bill about guaranteed minimum returns for commodities. You know, Kenya is a commodity economy. When you talk about agriculture, you talk about commodities. Correct. That is tea, coffee, etc. It is still in the pipeline of Parliament. I also try to come up, not trying, I am in the process, though the process is tedious, long, almost unending, about consolidating our state-owned enterprises. Jeff, our country has got so many companies. Our government or our country engages in so much unproductive businesses. You have so many state-owned enterprises, many of them that are bleeding cash. My agenda, my proposal, was that we consolidate, number one, parastatal, what I would call class A. Those that render public utilities, public goods. I was also trying to come up with a bill, in the same bill, with a proposal on how we can totally privatize and sell some of the entities that are actually doing private sector jobs, but also bleeding cash.
And what happened to that bill?
If you give examples of banks.
What happened to that bill?
Yeah?
What happened to it?
It is still in the pipeline.
And Jeff,
if we had more time, Jeff.
No, we don't have more time.
All right.
Jeff, I moved a motion which has been picked by the BBI of extending moratorium on higher education loans board. That when students graduate out of college, they are given a set number of years to reorganize their lives before, with a begging bowl, help approaches them. And I'm very happy that even though we discussed it in Parliament, it has now been entrenched.
Is that the 7 years or what's the period?
The 7-year moratorium.
Very good. Okay, Moyus 17 says, the issue is not the size of the cake, but how it is sliced and consumed. The devil is in the misappropriation. True that. Dennis K says, both MPs are right. Honorable Nyoro is right on current priorities, while Honorable Okello is right on national unity. Which route should Kenya go to save her dwindling economics? You say the Lee Kuan Yew way, you say South Korea.
My route is industrialization, because it has been proven by history that when you go that route, you are able to break the fault lines of negative ethnicity. People start having other mobile identities. A mobile identity is where I can move from maybe being a hawker into owning a Range Rover. But you cannot move from being a Kikuyu to being a Luo. Those static kind of identities are always detrimental. Those are based on ethnicity, religion, etc.
Okay, Job Mokaya, does Didi Nyoro still hold the view that Kenya needs a benevolent dictator?
He has asked a very good question. Jeff, we need an hour to discuss this.
No.
Because I talked, if you take my
about
tweet.
Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew. He was a benevolent dictator.
I talked about a benevolent dictator. A benevolent dictator is a person who invokes dictatorship to straighten things up for the sake of the country and for the benefit of the country. There is a difference between a benevolent dictator and a petty dictator. A petty dictator is a person who suppresses all other voices so that he can enrich himself and the people allowed them.
So, Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee Kuan Yew,
Benevolent.
General Park
Yes.
are my kind of guys. But Lee Kuan Yew was not a dictator. He was elected democratically.
Samson Mongadia says, ask Nyando MP to espouse on how BBI will bring inclusivity by having 5 gentlemen at the top. It could be women as well, could be ladies as well. 2, how is the document addressing the economic disparity between individuals, regions, zones? Real quick.
Firstly, Jeff, the 5 gentlemen are just going to be at the top, as he correctly puts it. There was a survey that was carried out and findings by the Public Service Commission that found out that 67% of public service jobs are held by 2 communities in this country, and they're known. So what BBI is putting a lot of teeth on is the regional balance in positions within the public service. So it's not just about the 5 people, but cascading it downwards, so that each and everybody who is qualified to work within the government has a fair share. And that is what the problem has been. And what was his second question?
It doesn't
Can
matter.
I answer the one for inclusivity?
Yeah, you answered it. But okay, you're saying top down, right?
Top down.
Hustler Nation says bottom up.
Yeah, but the issue of inclusivity, I agree BBI is bringing about inclusivity, but not to the Kenyan people, but to the ruling class. They are coming together, 5 men, not to bring Kenyans together, but to dominate the other Kenyans for their own good.
What happens, Jeff, if William Ruto suddenly finds himself in the same 5 men? Will he run away? What will he do? So he has to look at this, you know, just beyond this trivial
You're saying he could be part of the 5?
Yeah, what if? What if? Of course, the second question to that guy I've just remembered, he's asking how will that wealth go down to regions and individuals and all that. The mere fact that 30% is going deep down there, and there is a constitutional requirement on issues to do with procurement, such X amount of that money goes to the youth, people with disability and all, so that money will still get to everybody.
I thought it was 35%.
Jeff, allow me to put this point across.
But let me also add this, Jeff. Well,
and the 5
you're getting your fair share.
Jared, just a minute. In terms of inclusivity and the 5 positions, I have 2 points. Number 1, that is precisely what ODM had done in 2007. They had a Pentagon, meaning they had 5 guys at the top. There was still political competition. People still went to the polls. That's 1. Number 2, when you talk about having 5 men, and therefore the entire country, all communities are included, forgive me to say that I'm Kikuyu, because that is not the language of such a national television station. We occupy, so to say in quotes, the topmost of the 5 so-called positions. We also occupy the presidency of another arm of government, that is the legislature. If you tabulate, there are more Kikuyus in those top positions than many other ethnicities.
What's your point?
Many Kikuyus are still wallowing in poverty, when still we have representation at the top. That is why I'm trying to see there is nothing you can cure by bringing about 5 guys up. The best cure for our country and the problems bedeviling our country is to focus on the economy, so that I don't need to send anyone to eat on my behalf or to say it's our time to eat, because I'll be engaged in my own enterprise. But the current situation as it is, we have the topmost position, but the same topmost position actually makes my community disenfranchised in terms of business and enterprise.
Let me read the tweets, guys. Mitula Winnie says, a pending constitutional referendum cannot fail to be a priority for any party or group interested in national politics.
I agree.
It's going to happen.
But Jeff, if you allow me, let me put this point. The Constitution prefers at least 138 people in one constituency. Now, the 290 constituencies that we have has some...
You said how many?
198?
138 people in one constituency. The 290 constituencies that we have, some of them have less than 10,000 people. So what BBI has done, in order not to scrap them, it has firstly secured the 290 constituencies and added on 70 constituencies based on the data received from the Kenya Bureau of Statistics. Otherwise, we were going to have some of these small ones like Lamu East, Lamu West be scrapped off our radar.
Philip Mtemi says, after all is said and done, all we want is a good environment for us to work for ourselves, environment to create opportunities, just as the leaders are trying to create opportunities for them. Is everyone for themselves and God for us all?
That's what we are trying to kill.
I believe so.
All right, gentlemen, it's 11:30. I have to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the sign language interpreter is...
Let's continue till morning. Jeff?
You see how time flies?
People are
having fun.
Imagine.
Closing thoughts. Mheshimiwa, let's start with you. Closing thoughts going forward as a nation.
Yes. Jeff, it has been demonstrated that Kenyans are ready for a new constitutional moment. We do know areas where we are going to address some of the issues that have affected us on our transactions as a country. But again, on the flip side, we do not expect a perfect 100% constitution. Even the American Constitution, at the advent of their independence, in very few days, they still had the First Amendment that came soon after. We have had this constitution for the last 11 years. We have won this issue. We know where it pinches. And that is why both the president and the prime minister met and identified key areas of concern. So let us go make do with this. It is better than the current one that we have that has, stratified people and have preferred positions to go towards a particular direction. So if somebody was becoming too ambitious, that we are going to wake up one morning and have the most perfect constitution the world over, that is not going to happen. So let us go with this. In few years, we are going to have the second, amendment, third amendment, fourth amendment. So let us go step by step. And we are still a developing country. Young in terms of its existence since the year 1963. You can't compare with countries such as the US that have been there since 1776.
Correct.
So we are still having a long way to go. But at least one step made forward creates a whole difference, Jeff.
Absolutely. Mheshimiwa, you get the last word.
Thank you, Jeff. I first want to thank you for the opportunity, but my closing remarks would be that BBI should not be a priority for our nation, because I believe through the kind of discussion we had today, Kenyans can see that we have more pressing things that we can do. Our country currently, when President Uhuru took up the reins of power in 2013, our debt, both domestic and external, was around Kenya shillings 1.8 trillion. Currently, the debt reported by the Central Bank of Kenya is in excess of 8 trillion. That you have not added to the debts guaranteed by GOK to state-owned enterprises and counties. That is to a tune of 3.4 trillion. Cumulatively, we have borrowed, or our current threshold of our current borrowing starts at around 11 trillion Kenya shillings. That is actually beyond even the limit given by Parliament of 9 trillion. And therefore, we have actually overborrowed beyond our own laws. I think for our country to move in the right direction, the issue of the Constitution is not the impediment. It is the right policies. The right policies to make everyone included as an agent of economic transformation, so that we lessen the side of dependence and bring about everyone to be an agent of the productive economy. Currently, let me finalize with a country like Vietnam. Vietnam is more or less like our country, Kenya, in terms of fragmentation, but also their GDP per capita is close to ours. Through their deliberate policies currently, by the way, unemployment rate in Vietnam is the lowest in the world. You may talk about wages and incomes being low, but at least everyone now is being included as an agent of the economy. Their unemployment rate is around 2.2%, even below that of the US. Their income may be different. Lastly, we need to look at the productivity of the many agents that we have. Kenya being an agricultural nation, we need to work on data, not just opinions, Jeff. Data, number one, If you go to Murang'a, I have done the research. If you go to the farms in Murang'a, the productivity in land that is engaged in floriculture and horticulture has the highest productivity, at around 120,000 per annum. Our staple food maize that everyone grows, including my mother, is among the least. But because of our culture, we grow maize instead of the highly productive ones. That is only around 25,000 per acre per annum. Go, for example, to Western Kenya. We have always talked about this Mumia sugar, etc., etc. We need a leader who will bite the bullet, not just play populist. Tell the people of Western Kenya the current cost of producing sugar per ton in the world is around $250 per ton. In Kenya, it is $850 at the gate of the factory. We need to ask ourselves, do we need, for example, crop substitution so that we can increase the productivity of the things that we engaged our citizens on?
All right.
Jeff, we as Parliament expanded our debt portfolio to 24 trillion. So at 11, we are still the margin.
From 9 trillion.
Yes, yes.
Gosh,
so we are
Jeff,
still within
I am
the
just
margin.
so surprised. My brother, you
We
need
are
to
still
use
within
our
the
books
margin.
properly.
So
When
let
did
us
that
borrow
happen?
for development.
No, when did that happen?
You
Did
seldom
miss
come
our
to Bunge.
current debt
He
ceiling?
seldom
Jeff,
comes to Bunge.
is
You need to
9
educate my brother. Our current debt ceiling, we passed it in Parliament.
It was 9 trillion.
It is only 9 trillion.
You can
and we
check.
have overborrowed
24
beyond the
trillion.
limit of that 9 trillion.
Didinyoro, MP
Oh,
Kiaro.
thank you, Jeff.
Jarakello, MP Nyando. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let's do this again another time.
Anytime, Jeff.
We appreciate it, man.
Thank you
for,
so much.
Thank you for all this. I mean, I learned a lot today, by the way. Yeah, well done. And thank you for watching, folks, and your tweets and your feedback. As always, you know, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL, right here on Citizen Television. Oh, Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Oh, yes.
Jadung, jadung.
Jeff.